All right, so this is the reading, and I'll be going over questions for the 99% Invisible, the New Jersey. DRTA means Directed Reading and Thinking Activity, which is a fancy way of saying you read, and then there's a little pause, and you ask some questions. Some of the questions are more opinion-based, or just to kind of gather information, more so than right versus wrong. So it looks long, but it's really not that long of an activity. So, what do you know about the game of soccer? So a ton. Do you know all the rules? Do you know like absolutely nothing? Where are you coming from when it comes to starting this lesson, knowing that it's about soccer? What is it that you know? So here's your first bit of reading. Soccer came to Brazil in the late 19th century. It was first a game of the elites, but then over time became a game of the poor and working classes. BBC journalist Fernando Durante says soccer was the country's true revolution. And if soccer is Brazil's revolution, the Brazilian soccer jersey is its flag. So whenever you see the stop and then the text change, these are questions versus these are just readings. So using context clues, how would you define elites? So context is just things around it that give you information. So if we say that it used to be a game of the elites, but then over time became a game of the poor and working class, who do you think the elites are? What do you think that means? And then your second question, what do you think the author means when they say soccer was Brazil's revolution? So a revolution, as we learned from our last unit, is like a big dramatic change that, influences everybody's way of life in the area. So if they're saying soccer is Brazil's revolution, and we just read what we read up there, like what does it mean? And then we continue on with our reading. The Brazilian soccer jersey is iconic. Its bright canary yellow with green trim, worn with blue shorts, is known worldwide. Best soccer jersey out there, fight me. Compared with other soccer jerseys, the uniform is joyful and bold and seems to represent something essential about Brazil. But it was not always this way. Brazil used to play in plain white shorts. The story of how the uniform changed goes back to the World Cup of 1950. The Cup was held in Brazil for the first time in 1950. So then you stop. Why do you think the Brazil soccer jersey changed from white to the colorful jersey they have today? So, make a prediction. Do you think that the World Cup went well? Do you think it went bad? Why might they want to change their jerseys afterwards? And then we continue on reading. Dave Goldblatt, soccer writer and historian, sees the 1950 World Cup as a transforming event in the world's perception of Brazil. From a view of the country as a farm economy to a new urban industrialized power in the world. So they used to be like a farming area, and now they have like factories and they're more modern. The soccer stadium was built for the World Cup in Rio de Janeiro. The Maracanã, symbolized this transformation. It was like a stadium from outer space, a fabulous flat white concrete oval. The stadium looks like a huge flying saucer dropped into the center of a city. So then we stop using context clues from the text. How would you define perception? So what does perception mean? If that's someone's perception or we perceive something to be a certain way, what do you think we're trying to say there? And then how is it that Brazil changed? And how did the new soccer stadium represent a transformation? One more time here. How did the new soccer stadium represent a transformed Brazil? Going back to our reading. A lot of optimism about this country and its future surrounded the World Cup that year. It made the expectations of success for the Brazilian soccer team extremely high. So people were like, hey, this is a big deal for us. You really got to win. As the tournament began, they did not disappoint, beating Sweden, then Spain, then Mexico, and Yugoslavia. The final game would be with Uruguay, and because of the tournament structure, Brazil only had to tie the game to win the World Cup. Historically, Uruguay has been a very strong team, but they were now not as good of a team. Uruguay was now playing as the underdog, and its captain used this status to urge his players on. So your next question, what do you think it would be like to be a Brazilian soccer fan in the 1950s during the World Cup? Back to the reading. On the day of the World Cup final, all of Rio was focused on the game, and a good fraction of the city was actually there. Some estimates for the final game put the crowd in the, once again, don't know how to say that, but the name of the stadium, at more than 250,000 screaming fans. As players emerged, they were hit with a wall of noise. In the first half of the game, Brazil failed to get a goal and the crowd grew nervous. Then Brazil scored and there was a giant sigh of relief from the crowd. Even the journalists ran onto the field and embraced the players. It seemed like the game was won for Brazil. Predict. Do you think that Brazil is going to win this game? Explain your prediction. All right, moving back to our reading. But halfway through the second half, Uruguay scored, tying the game. Everything would have been fine for the team had Brazil been able to hold a tie, but then came the turning point. Uruguay winger Alcides Giga dribbled down the right side looking to pass. Anticipating his pass, the goalkeeper moved out of position. Giga noticed this, and instead of passing, he shot and scored. There was utter silence from the Brazilian crowd. Brazil lost the 1950 World Cup. Using context clues from the text, how would you define the word anticipating? So if we go back to that sentence, so you have the winger dribbling down the side, looking to pass, and then anticipating his pass, the goalkeeper moved out of position. And then your next question, predict. Who do you think Brazil will blame for the loss? Going back to our reading, Brazil lost that game, and Brazilians were absolutely crushed. People left the stadium in tears, and some of their tears transformed into racist grudges. Brazilians were quick to put blame on others. Many focused on the goalkeeper, Barbosa, who was black. Barbosa and two other players had become scapegoats. Later in life, Barbosa told the story of hearing a woman whispering to a child, "This is the man who made Brazil cry." It was more than 50 years before the Brazilian team picked another black goalkeeper. So, how did Brazil's loss in the 1950 World Cup further inequalities in Brazil? Highlight or underline your evidence. So, type it out down here, and then what are you gathering it off of? Highlight and kind of underline your evidence. But Barbosa wasn't the only focus for blame. Everything was blamed, including those plain white jerseys and the players had worn during the game. Brazilians thought they were cursed, and the soccer authorities decided to hold a competition to design a new uniform. The contest had only one key rule. The colors of the uniform had to include all the colors of the Brazilian flag, so green, blue, yellow, and white. Hundreds of people entered the contest, including Alder Garcia Schneel, my bad, this is hard, a 19-year-old illustrator from a small town on the border between Brazil and Uruguay. So, why do you think there was a rule that you had to use the colors of the Brazilian flag? So why is it that they wanted these jerseys to include these colors? Once again, you're predicting here, so it's okay if you don't get it right or that you don't know. You're just making a guess. Working four colors into just the shirt would be difficult, but Chile, we're going to go with now, soon realized that he would use the whole uniform to include the colors of the national flag. The result was a uniform of blue shorts, white socks, a yellow shirt with green trim around the neck and sleeves. This design won and went on to become an iconic symbol of Brazil, full of sun and life. In 1962, the Brazilians won the World Cup in Chile, in Chile's uniform. Players like Pelé wore the yellow shirt and dazzled the world with their extraordinary skill and beauty. After color TV aired, the world watched Brazil in their shimmering yellow shirts win the 1970 World Cup in Mexico. So, the new jersey was to represent a united Brazil. Do you think it worked to unite Brazil? Explain. And that is everything from this activity. See, told you it was shorter.